Hold that just for a second there. Keep playing that bumper music.
I'll keep it going.
I have some administrative duties to take care of.
For our early arrivals, be sure to share this feed to your page or profile.
That should work. Cheers.
Thank you. What are we drinking tonight?
Loch Lomond 14. It's just right. I wonder if I wonder if they're going to watch tonight.
The people on the title slide?
They're going to put me in the movies, and all they have to do is act naturally.
The real question is, what are you wearing tonight?
What am I wearing tonight?
What are you wearing?
Well, here's the deal.
What is
what
that?
I am wearing is going to be offered to the public, but unfortunately for Lucky Barnard and Mike Petum, they don't come in fat size, so they won't be able to buy them.
It's one of a kind. This one of a kind thing that Dan's wearing tonight. It's going to be for sale to you before long. Exclusive.
Hey, we're on X. It's live.
It is. Are you ready to be on camera?
Let's do this.
All right. We welcome you tonight to the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are the only live local liberty-minded program right here in Kootenai County where we've been exposing corruption. We've been doing this for quite a while now. We're like the OGs. We expose the political power players, politicians, social influencers, power playing pastors. My name is Dawna Wilson. I'm here with Dan. It's Dan Wilson. I am here to screen your questions and comments, and you can get involved right there in the comment section, as some of you are already so wholeheartedly doing. And then also can text or leave a voicemail to 208-366-4671. Again, you can text in real time. We check those throughout the broadcast. If you wanted a bit of anonymity, you can text that number 208-366-4671. If you got something you want to share, but you don't want your name up on the screen, you have an option to do that. A reminder that opinions expressed are ours only and not necessarily that of any of our advertisers, sponsors, affiliates, or guests tonight. And again, if you're watching live, be sure to click that share button, share this to your feed or profile. And thanks to everybody who's watching live on all these platforms tonight. This show is one that almost didn't happen.
Really? Almost?
Apparently.
Oh.
At least not without a few unexpected twists along the way. Over the last several days, we've watched rumors spread, narratives emerge, and some very interesting questions begin circulating throughout Kootenai County. We're going to be covering three major stories tonight. First, we're going to be joined by a guest whose lawsuit involving Sheriff Bob Norris has received really almost no public attention. Most people are familiar with the Pennie Collinson lawsuit. Many have heard about the Theresa Borenpohl lawsuit. But what if there are other cases involving the sheriff's office and Sheriff Bob Norris that have received little to no public scrutiny because you don't know about it? Well, tonight we're going to hear directly from the claimant himself. We're going to revisit the Ryan McClintock incident, the event that really was quite shocking here in this county when McClintock arrived at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office armed with a baseball bat and shattered windows before being arrested. The case generated headlines, speculation, and countless questions. Tonight, we're going to bring you an update and revisit the circumstances that continue to leave many residents asking, what was it that led to the moment, and what were some of the rumors swirling around that event in the first place? And then finally, we're going to discuss the recent high-speed crash that became the center of intense community speculation as rumors spread. Official information remains scarce, creating a vacuum that was quickly filled with theories and accusations and loads of confusion. We're going to walk through what we know, what we don't know, and why some of the events surrounding the story deserve a closer look. And that's going to be pretty interesting. As always, we encourage you to think critically, ask questions, come to your own conclusions. We are not telling you what to do and what to believe and how to vote or anything like that. This is Liberty Without Compromise. We're going to go ahead and get started. Here's your host, Dan Wilson.
This is episode 75. That's kind of a mile marker. We have quite a lineup for you tonight. It's all about why we're not really Mayberry. Now, I know that many of you, like me, wish that we lived in Mayberry times. We want to think that our sheriff is someone of outstanding character and moral standard that is of the highest, somebody to look up to, somebody that protects his citizens. We want to think that our local news is also genuinely looking out for the good of those in the community. We want to know that our government is not corrupt, that there is actual accountability, but the blinders have begun to come off. And many of you out there, whether it is just recently or whether you've been along with us for this journey, you have also come to understand that there does not seem to be any accountability in this community, generally speaking, for law enforcement, public and political figures. There is no one that is keeping the gate. Nobody. And we're going to talk about a couple instances tonight of why this county is going in a very wrong direction because of you, the voters, who voted to bring Bob Norris in for yet a second term, even though the first term he literally did nothing other than brought a small pay raise to some of his deputies. You listen to his campaign promises 2 years into his second term. What has he delivered on? On the campaign trail of 24, he stated enthusiastically, this county cannot afford the civil rights lawsuits that will occur at the hands of an inexperienced candidate. And since that time, 2 years ago, we have seen multiple lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits, that have been filed against the sheriff. Pretty shocking. We have seen his actions on at least one of them. Another one, we have heard the story. We have heard some of the first-person witnesses that were there at the event that Norris did what he did to a photographer. We understand that current lawsuit is now waiting for trial in January or March of 27, but it's a year out. But we're going to talk tonight about yet another lawsuit against not only Bob Norris, sheriff, but also against the county and the prosecutor. We're going to bring this man on here in just a few seconds to discuss this, but the reality of it is this county is not going in a good direction, whether it is the taxes, the spending, the manipulation that's going on by County Commissioner Bruce Matari as he attempts to bring in Los Angeles County law enforcement business practices, their base model, as he goes to charge every city that they provide services as a county provider. We've talked for a long time about the power struggles. This is the most political town I have ever come across. Everything is politicized. Everything is tied together. The Republican Central Committee is tied into the power player political churches, the altar, candlelight, and in many cases, real life ministries, all equally with their own issues that we have talked about over and over and over again. Well, just last week, after John Padula lost his bid for the second time to become a county commissioner, his hat was in the ring once again alongside Senator Ben Tays, who was vying for the position to become the new chairman of the Kootenai Republican Central Committee. And he put out his plea, his attempt to bring unity, as he said, to the table. And out of 70-some votes, 61 were against and 9 were for him. And John Padula, who, after getting spanked handily as his campaign unfolded for his attempt to become a county commissioner yet again, he also got spanked 61-9. I may be off 1 or 2 numbers. That's roughly as I recall. We talked to you about John Padula and the fact with his background and his inability to protect his own family and his own children, as well as his long history of sordid affairs, why he would not be a good candidate. He then attempted to take over the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. And here's the good news. The Candlelight Cabal lost. They lost handily. Hopefully we're going to see a return to sensible politics right here in Kootenai County with accountability, where we don't get the rubber stamp of Brent Regan. We don't have the control, hopefully, of the executive board that has been ruling with an iron fist in this county for 5, 6, 7 years. So Ben Tays, I'm really glad that the man who is our senator, who claims he's for family values but continues to frequent and associate himself with Paul Van Noy, who admitted to not turning in his daughter's own sexual abuse that took place by the neighbor Jacob Saldana while she was a minor. I'm really glad that there is some common sense in the Central Committee to not have you anywhere near the chairman position and the satellite altar church and all of their many troubles with the ranch program and their recovery programs. The one recovery program where John's own daughters were sexually assaulted by one of the residents that was living with them while there was no separation between him and his family, this Jeremiah Camp. It's time to go back to common sense, as Brent Regan would say. And that's exactly what I hope we are going to be seeing. Now, we talked about several weeks ago the Ryan McClintock issue. You guys heard us in our own words refute the allegations that we had somehow worked Ryan up. We conspired with him. And over the past several weeks, there have been many interesting developments. Let's go ahead and play this first clip one, give you a sample of what we're going to be talking about later on in the program. You'll want to stick around.
About this narrative that's being pushed in Kootenai County that Dan and Dawna Wilson are co-conspirators in this whole thing with my brother. The fact is that Ryan needed intervention, he needed support, he needed help, and he was denied that. Dan and Dawna Wilson, they may have known Ryan. Ryan may have had Dan on his podcast. That doesn't mean that these two people are co-conspirators. Within a few minutes of my brother being arrested, I was reached out to. I was asked to get my brother's phone. I was asked to report back to that person all of the phone calls, text messages. I was asked to reach out to the detective and push this same narrative. I was asked to get on social media and blame Dan and Dawna Wilson. And ultimately, I just want my brother to get help. I want my nephew to have his dad come home. This has nothing to do with Dan and Dawna Wilson. And for the people that are pushing this narrative, just know it's the same people that were in there provoking my brother on social media the morning of his arrest. These are people that are tied with Bob Norris. These are people that are tied to local law enforcement. And like I said in previous videos, I really question why the day was handled the way it was. And now to have this narrative being pushed so hard in Kootenai County when it really should be about mental health reform, intervention, how to prevent crimes, how to keep the community safe. You know, it's just a huge slap in the face, not only to me, but to any other family that's gone through something similar.
That, of course, was Jessica McClintock Height, the sister of Ryan McClintock. We're going to be talking about what she was stating in this video in greater detail. But if you value liberty without compromise as much as Dawna and I do, and you live in Kootenai County, or frankly, any county that you live in, you're going to want to pay attention, because it is up to the citizenry to hold these elected officials accountable, since apparently we have a prosecuting attorney in this county that doesn't do shit. Doesn't bother to put out any statements. He doesn't ever come out and advise publicly other elected officials where they probably should or shouldn't shut up. Now, globally, the surveillance state is encroaching upon us closer and closer every day. I know that one of our favorite local groups is Watchman Ministry. They just put out a recent article, and in the article, they make the case for the ever-growing corporate technocratic state where we are losing our anonymity to these big corporations. And it's not just government. We're going to play a clip that you can watch in its entirety, the full 7 minutes. We'll put a Q code up. But take a look at what they recently published about Big Brother and the big corporations.
The modern surveillance state is not being built by governments. It is being built by large technology companies that are selling that information to the government. The UK seems to be one of the furthest down the path to a totalitarian-style surveillance state. Sadly, American local, state, and federal governments are following the example set by the UK. These days, automated license plate readers, ALPRs, are considered 10-year-old technology. Oxfordshire, England, has even created 6 15-minute zones for residents to live in. The city council wound up removing the phrase from the plan after the residents protested. Interesting to note that what was important to the city planners was the toxic phrase, not the actual implementation. Significant portions of the population, including massive numbers of the 30 and under crowd, spend countless hours scrolling on their phones. Here are some of the numbers from a recent U.gov poll. The majority, 57% of Americans, say they are spending at least 5 hours a day looking at screens. 21% think they usually spend 5 to 6 hours looking at screens. 16% estimate it's 7 to 8 hours. 13% think it's 9 to 12 hours. 4% think it's 13 to 16 hours. And 3% say they spend more than 16 hours a day looking at a screen. 1/3, 32% of adults under 30 spend more than 9 hours a day looking at a screen, compared to 24% of 30 to 44-year-olds, 16% of 45 to 64-year-olds, and 11% of Americans 65 and older. When you think about it, a population that sits in front of a screen that is consistently sending telemetry data back to the corporation that made it as much easier to control and manipulate. Add to that all the data that our smart home devices are collecting about us. Something to ponder. If our phones are sending telemetry data regularly, is there any need for a digital ID in order to track us? We are giving up our own personal liberty to the digital gods of distraction. AI slop is content created by AI designed to keep people scrolling on their phones. It is also being used by many different people and governments to push their agenda and to manipulate people into believing things that are false. We have seen everything from fake videos around the Israel-Hamas conflict to the Russia-Ukraine conflict to fake news stories about anything and everything political, including large quantities of AI slop created to denigrate ICE. None of this AI slop has anything that resembles Christian ethics or morals.
And it is coming in hot and fast. Go to Watchman Ministry. The QR code is right here. I can never remember how to do
you
that.
got it. You're
Oh,
good.
okay. I just can't reach my
You're
arm back
making
up
it
far.
happen.
Go to to that QR code, watch the full 7-minute video. It's very well worth your time, gives you a lot to ponder. And we appreciate Watchmen and their work right here in Kootenai County to keep voters informed.
Welcome to the program, Suzanne. Glad you finally got in here and joined us. She's, I think you're kind of whining, being a little over the top that you got that time change in Tennessee, so you're late and logging on. Shame on you. Kidding. Thanks for joining us on YouTube tonight. And do you want to answer this one now? Lucas wants to know, he wants more info on the shirt Dan's wearing.
We're going to talk about how you can get one of these shirts.
Well, I know Lucas is dying to get one.
Yeah.
He's dying to get one.
This is a one-off right now. It's a one-off. It's a protocol.
Protocol or prototype?
We have a special guest coming up right now, and you're going to probably be as surprised as I am, although I'm not really surprised, at what he has to say about his current lawsuit with Kootenai County electeds.
Yeah, tonight we're joined by Zachary Love. He's an attorney and the plaintiff in a lawsuit involving Sheriff Bob Norris and events that until recently have received very little public attention, until tonight. While much of the public discussion surrounding the sheriff's office has focused on a handful of highly publicized controversies, although there seems to be a new one every day because we're talking about several of them on the show tonight. But Zachary's case remains largely unknown to many residents throughout the county. What makes tonight's conversation particularly important is that we're not talking about secondhand information, rumors, or speculation. We're talking to the individual who was directly involved in the events that ultimately led to this lawsuit. Tonight, Zachary's going to share his firsthand account, explain what happened, discuss the circumstances involving tribal police that preceded the legal action, and help viewers better understand why the lawsuit was filed in the first place. As always, our goal is to hear directly from the people involved and allow you guys, our audience, to evaluate the facts for yourselves. So with that, we are going to welcome Zachary to the program.
Zachary, welcome. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dawna, for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
When I first read your complaint a couple weeks ago, I was really fascinated by it, having been a former law enforcement officer myself. As I read through, it's pretty thorough. That didn't come by accident. Tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background before we get into your story.
Yes, thank you. So my background is legal oriented. I was a paralegal for 10 years out of Chicago. I continued on. I got my bachelor's degree and then did some distance ed online and brick and mortar. And I graduated with my executive juris doctorate law degree from Purdue. I've been admitted as a tribal attorney in several tribal courts throughout Idaho, Washington, Wisconsin, and California. Despite there's a controversial background there, but I still am licensed to practice in 3 different tribal courts. And this case is basically, it's not revenge. It's just the purpose of me being here is to expose government corruption. It's a lawsuit that, you're right, it hasn't gotten any attention despite my efforts to do so. You guys were the first ones to give me a chance to talk about this. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Now let's go back a little bit. Give us a quick, minute or 2-minute summary of what it's about. And then we're going to dive into some greater details.
Sure. This case arises from government misconduct at the tribal level, as well as the Kootenai County level under Bob Sheriff's direction. Law enforcement, including at the highest level law enforcement officers with Chelsea Torgerson, Stanley Mortensen, the prosecutors, Ms. Torgerson does not no longer employed there after this case was filed, ironically. I don't know the reasons for that. So it has to do with federal claims, assault, battery. I was arrested during this whole thing that ended up resolving in my favor. It has to do with unreasonable searches and seizures and just intimidation by, as I would like to refer to these guys, uneducated thugs under the direction of Bob Norris and Stanley Mortensen himself.
So you were, and we're going to get into greater detail, but for our viewers, there was contact by law enforcement. You were arrested. You were eventually charged. You went to trial. Your charges were what?
So all of my charges were dropped except for one we stipulated to because I was running out of money to fight, and that is dropped also. It was I think it's called the first time offender program. It was resisting a peace officer. So there were a bunch of trumped up charges from intimidating a police officer because when this all happened, I threatened to sue them. They knew who I was from previous lawsuits I've been successful on for my clients in Coeur d'Alene Tribal Court, as well as Colville. So that being said, I ended up getting every charge dropped. Some of them we forced by motion practice. My attorney was Rick Bachman. He's a great attorney, former prosecutor. He was a deputy prosecutor for the longest time in Kootenai County. And I believe worked alongside with Bob Norris for a while. So the charges end up favorable to me. Nothing's zero convictions. 4 charges resulted in 0 convictions. So now that it's my turn to prosecute them. And this case was originally filed in the Kootenai County District Court, which the defendants in this case, the government, filed a notice of removal. Now we are in the Northern District of Idaho litigating in federal court, and I'm on the front lines. Last but not least, I will say this. I just got notice before the show started that as of yesterday, some of the defendants filed, Bob Norris, for example, filed a partial motion for dismissal. We have not had any hearings despite this case almost a year into it.
Well, he's probably getting a little tired of his time in court as of late. He's got several active lawsuits. The Borenpohl one's going to be pretty interesting. But let's revisit this. So your charges were dropped. Now you're going back after these defendants. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us what happened, dates and time, and what led to your arrest and charges.
Yeah, I'm just going to, for reference, because it has been a little while. The criminal charge was filed in 2025, or I believe so. But it was do you want me to start from the lawsuit when I filed it or the actual arrest dates?
Let's start with the arrest.
Okay. It was February 9th, 2024. I'll just give a synopsis of what happened. I was a passenger in a vehicle, actually, headed to Coeur d'Alene. There were 2 other parties in the car. A veteran friend of mine was the driver. And basically, we got pulled over right across the border for a light cover missing. That was the tribal police's probable cause. It ended up being cross-deputized tribal officers who also were commissioned with the county. We did not know that at the time. I did not know that. My attorney didn't know that until at trial. So that being said, I challenged the officers to the probable cause for the stop. They said they couldn't speak to me. Specifically, defendant Josh Boyd. He's a Coeur d'Alene tribal police officer. He was the one who approached me at the passenger's window. And basically, I was, again, a passenger. And they brought the drug dogs out. They were unmarked, not wearing formal uniforms. And it was dark out. It was cold out. And basically, things escalated from there. But I'll stop for now unless you want me to continue going into that.
So you were stopped on an equipment violation, not a moving violation, but an equipment violation. Correct. Coeur d'Alene Tribal Police stops you. Once they approach the driver and explain it, what was the reason that they determined they needed to bring a dog?
That's a good question, Dan. And we're trying to figure that out in discovery. And Norris stonewalled us and he wouldn't answer those questions. But basically, it was a fishing expedition, bring the dog out. We're coming across the border to smuggle marijuana, drugs, whatever it is. Obviously, it's legal there in Idaho. And I ended up just speaking for the driver. And I was yelling over the driver as a passenger on the front side, asking him what the probable cause for the stop. He said, "I can't speak to you. You're not the driver." There was a witness in the back seat as well. So that answer was never. He said, "We're conducting an investigation." Eventually, I got that out of defendant Boyd. I'll refer to him as defendant. And he explained why he pulled us over. And eventually, the driver, 77-year-old man, veteran, doing a DUI sobriety test after admitting to drinking 1 beer. But the drug dog, there was no probable cause. From a legal standpoint, there was absolutely no basis for that. And this dog, I think he was trying to fabricate something like they call it a hit. So they have a probable cause under the plain view doctrine to search the vehicle without having to have a warrant if we don't consent to it. So that being said, there was no hits. The driver admitted to having 1 beer. He got out. He passed the breathalyzer and sobriety test. And then I continued to question because we were still detained. We were all detained, basically, sitting on the side of the road. So I don't have the answer to that other than a fishing expedition to try to manufacture some charges. And I can tell you how the rest of it played out. It was pretty traumatic for me personally.
So I'm going to get this straight in my mind. You're stopped. He declares there's an equipment violation. At some point, he asks the driver, 77-year-old man, have you been drinking? And at some point, he decides to do field sobriety tests. Did that occur before or after he called for the dog?
That was after. The dog came out right away. He didn't ask for driver's license, insurance, registration. He didn't do the old trick, I pulled you over. It was war. He's already on a fishing expedition. He brought the canine unit. There was no conversation. He rolled the window down, looked at him. He didn't say nothing. Defendant Boyd walked around the vehicle about 2 times with the dog and then came up and said, do you have license, registration, insurance? The procedure and the training was absolutely inappropriate legally. And his conduct, his demeanor was just far from professional. I can say that. So that's how that started.
How did you wind up in cuffs?
Let's fast forward a little bit. I used my voice pretty 1A. I ended up asking him the questions, and he kept saying, Josh Boyd, defendant Boyd. I said, why did you pull us over, officer? He goes, I can't speak to you. You're not the driver. You're a passenger. I said, well, I'm a witness. So what happened? I'd like to know why we're here. And then he continued to try to ignore me and speak to them. So I forced my voice and I said, are we free to go or being detained? He's like, well, the driver's under investigation for DUI. So I got out of the vehicle. I had to go pee. I'm not gonna lie. We've been sitting there a while. I got out of the vehicle and I went over to the side of the road and I was trying to ask questions while he was in the middle of a sobriety test, which I would argue that's a little bit borderline, obstruction of justice, potentially interfering with an investigation. But that happened. And then I went back to the vehicle. He came back around and started questioning me on things unrelated to the traffic stop. And basically what happened was I ran my mouth and I said, I'm an attorney and you don't have jurisdiction as a tribal police officer unless you're cross-commissioned with the county. And then basically we got into this little, if you will, cross-exam. I was asking the officer questions and I asked him if he was cross-deputized with the county and having jurisdiction to be on a public roadway, county roadway. The reservation's nearby there, the Coeur d'Alene reservation. But so that being said, I ended up getting charged for interfering with a canine investigation, intimidating a police officer because I told him that I was going to sue them. This is false imprisonment, Fourth Amendment violation, so forth, as alleged in the lawsuit. And I gave my name. He goes, we know exactly who you are, Mr. Love. And then I said the comment, you probably do from previous cases I've been involved with for tribal members representing them. So I ended up getting ultimately arrested for resisting a peace officer. Here's the formal charges. I was resisting a peace officer, obstructing justice by getting out of the vehicle with the DUI checkpoint, if you will, interfering with that, and then intimidating an officer because I said I was going to sue him. And then I don't remember it was an unlawful assertion of authority. It was some charge that had no legal basis. So anyways, that being said, the driver and the passenger in the back seat drive away. I'm in the back of a squad car, a tribal squad car, for 3 hours before they decide whether or not they're going to transport me to Kootenai County Jail or they're going to release me. At that point, they were waiting around, my ride. So I ended up going, this is where it gets worse. I ended up going to the Kootenai County Jail. And as soon as I get out there, I'm in a suit and tie. I just left my office. And when I got to the jail, there were 6, I would say they're probably in their 20s, deputies that treated me like a villain of color and a violent criminal. They ripped off my tie. They they put me in a jumpsuit and I had bond money. It was $600 for these charges. There's actually one charge at that time. It was resisting and obstructing a peace officer. They go hand in hand, and it was a Class A misdemeanor. I was there for 3 hours, and they treated me. It was unbelievable. It was atrocious how they treated me while I was there and being detained at the jail.
So you had to wait until Monday to bond out?
No, they eventually, because it was a statutory crime, if you will, or charge, I was able to bond out. I didn't go through a bondsman. I had cash on me. I paid it. They took whatever other cash I had left over, put it on a debit card. I had to wait for about 3 hours for them to process me. They said they were really busy, but they were letting people that came in after me just go in and sign an I-bond and get out. But they didn't like me. The deputies said that I was disruptive, I believe. So they wanted to keep me longer and make it more, torturous for me. And I said, just put me in holding cell. I'm going to bond out. I've got the money. I know what the bond is. And I'm still in my suit and tie. I was in a yellow jumpsuit, I believe, with these sandals on and just the most disgusting conditions. It's unsanitary. And I waited there for 3 hours like that until they allowed me to bond out. And then I'll stop and let you guys ask questions if you want, but it gets better because I actually met with Stanley Mortensen in his office the following day.
Yeah, let's go ahead and continue. And I'm going to come back with questions and comments after.
Okay. So basically the next day after I bonded out, I actually just drive up to the Kootenai County, the prosecutor's office. Chelsea Torgensen was the one prosecuting the case. Stan was her boss, Stan Mortensen. They're also defendants in the lawsuit. So I actually don't get an appointment. I just walk in Mr. Mortensen's office, and he happens to be there. And we talk off the record in his office about what happened just the night before. I show him the evidence on my phone. I had it recorded like this, and basically he said, can you send that to me in formal discovery? And I'll look at that and maybe see if we can drop the charges and I have to litigate. So he had evidence from my phone that I voluntarily provided because we were going to disclose in the case if we had to. And basically he tried to use that against me, and then he never dropped the charges. Chelsea got involved. They wanted a year in jail. I have zero criminal history, zero convictions. And then Chelsea amended the complaint with not Bob Norris, but Stanley Mortensen's instruction, and added 3 additional charges. So I beat him in all charges. It was obstruction. It was intimidation of a police officer, false assertion of authority, interfering with a canine investigation because I was talking to the officer while the dog was sniffing around. Like, what the hell are you doing here? And then it was resisting and obstruct, which is one charge. They're simultaneous on the statute. So I was charged with 4 counts. I was facing 4 years as a passenger in a vehicle from these. I call them thugs. The way they conduct themselves are thugs. They were dressed in black, unmarked. They didn't identify themselves. And, I'm sorry, the last one was false misuse of 911. I called 911. I asked for the real police and said, send a sheriff or a deputy out, a state one, because I don't know who these guys are. They won't identify themselves. So that was what got me the last charge, was misuse of a 911 call. And the deputy, Defendant Boyd, grabbed my phone during the 911 call and took it and hung up. So if anything, he should have been charged with interfering. And
that was a tribal police officer cross-deputized as a sheriff's deputy.
Correct. And we were not aware of that because we didn't disclose that at the time. In fact, we didn't know that was a discovery.
Let me go back real quick and interject. In my 2024 run for sheriff, one of the things that I talked about quite often is the now defunct volunteer helicopter program that was started by a lieutenant and some businessmen at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And they had received about $500,000 in donations from local businessmen to get this volunteer helicopter that Bob Norris wanted to have. Kootenai County Sheriff's Office would not buy one, but they thought they could get this volunteer organization that would then provide helicopter services all over the county. Now, during this bid, they were trying to sell the county commissioners on. This is in right around, I'm going to get the year off, maybe 22, 23. The tribal police, the Coeur d'Alene tribe gave a $200,000 donation to the helicopter program, to the volunteer organization, not the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, but to the, as I recall, it was to the Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit, the nonprofit. Shortly thereafter, an email came from tribal council to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, to Sheriff Norris and Under Sheriff Brett Nelson, requesting that the tribal police were allowed to become primary law enforcement for both tribal and non-tribal members. And they were shortly thereafter granted. This was right after a $200,000 donation, and Bob went ahead and he swore these tribal members. And what the viewer may or may not know is that tribal police is federal, and it's quite different than domestic. Kootenai County happens to be partially on tribal land, and I think it was rule, is it 206? I'm going to forget what the jurisdiction. It's a federal jurisdiction that allows the sheriff in the county to still perform law enforcement services for county residents that are non-tribal members that live on tribal areas. And the way it's supposed to work is that a tribal member can obviously request, if they call for law enforcement or if law enforcement is dispatched to a trouble that is occurring, the tribal members always have the right to have a tribal officer come and on tribal lands come and take that call, whereas a non-tribal member has a constitutional right and the sheriff has the duty to provide a sheriff's deputy for their calls for service in most circumstances. So it sounds like what you were is you were a victim of this cross-deputization, which has caused a lot of controversy because it looks really like a quid pro quo. And you said that the car was not marked. They didn't come out and, according to you, identify themselves as Coeur d'Alene Tribal Police that also has Kootenai County cross-deputization. So it was kind of pretty much dark, it sounds like.
Very dark. And I had a taser pointed to my head by one of the officers, and then the other one. So just to get kind of backtracking a little, why it was traumatic for me is because I've never had any involvement in law enforcement like this before. Defendant Boyd, tribal cop Josh Boyd, put his hand through the window. Before he commanded me to get out of the vehicle, he grabbed my arm and pulled on it really hard while the other guy had a taser to my head to the passenger side while the older gentleman was being detained on the roadway in freezing temperatures on the side of the roadway. So that was traumatic for me, but it was very misleading. I asked them over and over. I asked, are you federal? What jurisdiction do you work for, or which one are you deputized with? And they said, we already told you we're the police. And then they wouldn't specifically identify themselves as part of the problem that why it escalated. They allowed it to escalate to this. So that was really frustrating. But, I actually rode along on the service when I served defendant Bob Norris. We went to both of the sheriffs because we got to run around from his secretary. My processor was very sharp and he's very good. Anyways, he ended up serving the secretary. I can't remember her name. It's in the declaration.
Lisa Robertson, I believe.
Yes, you're correct. It was Lisa. I remember Lisa. I don't remember the last name, but because I didn't serve her. But Bob Norris was hiding in his office like a coward while Lisa was kind of smirking and smiling. She's like, oh, he's in trouble. He would not show his face, and I still haven't seen him in court. I'm looking forward to that day. I've also written, like you made a comment, this case has been very quiet. And in fact, I've filed several motions, Dan, and just to get the case moving along, expedited hearings and stuff. The docket's building up. The case will be a year old in September. And I've written to the Coeur d'Alene Press. They sounded interested and they declined it. They wouldn't publish anything. Everyone has turned me down and getting this out there, except for you guys.
Well, it comes back down to our experience for the past 2 years. Everybody is covering for each other in this community. Coeur d'Alene Press, from everything that I have ever observed, is worthless. I won't get into that, but let's just say that my eyes have been opened in the past 2+ years about how little accountability and interest in transparency for law enforcement and government officials in this county. Now, in the few remaining minutes that we have, and we're going to bring you back on time, and I want to go over some of the body cam footage that I think you have of your interaction with the tribal officers, because I'd like to see that myself. I'm just taking you at this point at your word. Obviously, you were found innocent in court, but I'd still like to observe that myself. And then, we'll go ahead and talk more about how it's progressing. But tell us right now, what are you specifically suing, and who are you suing? And give us a little rundown on that.
Sure. So I'm suing for, it's under USC 1983. It's a civil rights federal statute. Some of the claims derive from the state of Constitution of Idaho, the Fourth Amendment, which is federal. So the defendants moved to federal court. So I'm suing for assault and battery, Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizures, intentional infliction of emotional distress. It's a tort claim, IED. And then theft, actually civil theft, or conversion is called in civil law, because there was money missing out of my wallet. We were actually headed to the Worley Coeur d'Alene Casino. So I had a lot of cash in my wallet and it was all gone, but like $200. So I'm alleging that in the lawsuit as well. And I'll just give you an update on the case status. I'm suing defendant Josh Boyd. He's a tribal officer for Coeur d'Alene Tribe, cross commission with the county. Chelsea Torgensen, she was a deputy prosecutor under Stanley Mortensen for Kootenai County. She no longer is employed there since the suit's been filed. I find that very circumstantial. And Stanley Mortensen, the chief prosecutor, I'm suing him. I'm suing Kootenai County, and Bob Norris, last but not least. And this case is in federal court, and I have some aggressive motions that are filed. They've been stonewalling us. A judge is Amanda Brailsford, Judge Brailsford, and she's in the Northern District of Idaho. This case has not, we haven't had one hearing on this, Dan, since the case has been filed. And I filed motions as of yesterday. I just got notice today that the defendant, Bob Norris, and Chelsea Torgensen filed a partial motion to dismiss and then withdrew it. So I haven't even been served with it yet.
And
but we're trying to move the case
withdrew
along.
it.
It says they partially withdrew it according to the PACER docket, which is PACER. You can see all the federal cases and everything on there, but
Right.
I haven't even seen it yet. It was filed yesterday. I haven't been e-served with it or anything like that. So we'll see what it says, but I will keep you updated accordingly on the progress of this case as you allow. And then and that footage was actually my phone footage before it was ripped out of my hand and I was arrested.
So tribal police does not wear body cams?
They did wear body cams, but there's ironically and selectively the part where they had a taser in my head, to my head from the driver's side. That whole excerpt, about 2.5 minutes, was deleted or manipulated, and then it skipped over. My attorney found this out in discovery. And Stanley Mortensen failed to disclose to the court, which we asked for sanctions, I did, that he actually had that footage from my phone from our meeting the day after the arrest. And voluntary discovery. But I still have that. And I have it on my cloud, but I have to somehow get it to you. It's very lengthy and it's video. So we'll figure out a way between you and Dawna to get that to you.
Sure. And once again, for those that may just be joining us now, your background is tribal law?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And anything specifically?
Sorry. There's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize for the... I practice for the IRS. I'm licensed as a Circular 230 practitioner, audit defense, offer compromise. I've been licensed 11 years federally, an accountant in New York. And then I have 3 tribal law admissions, some previous controversial history. For political reasons, I was disbarred in a few tribal courts as a domino effect because I'm going after the government. If you can't beat them, disbar them. And that was a call of tribes theory. That was a Coeur d'Alene tribes theory. Because here we are in federal court and they can't disbar me because I'm prosecuting myself.
Fascinating.
So civil litigation and taxation.
Well, Zachary, we greatly appreciate you coming on and giving us more details to your current lawsuit. And of course, we, are glad you're able to explain to us the circumstances that led up to your arrest. And we'll be looking to see how this progresses through the system. Hopefully there are others in legitimate media, if not legacy media, the alternative media, that will start picking these things up. This is part of transparent government, folks. If you can't watch what your prosecuting attorney is doing, what your sheriff's doing, look, I understand. Government officials, especially electeds, get sued all of the time, but you have to take the merits of each case, just like we did with Borenpohl and some of these other cases that have gone through. You need to read what was actually alleged and what the evidence is. Mr. Love had his charges dropped, and he was found not guilty. So this is a very interesting case. Thank you very much for sharing with us, and we look forward to having you on in a not too distant future for an update.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I appreciate your time and allowing me to speak about this corruption, and we'll keep you updated as the case progresses.
Great. Thank you. So these are always interesting. I'm going to get a whole bunch of comments by law enforcement officers, friends, and others.
Yeah.
How dare you talk about this? You know how it is on traffic stuff. Yeah, I understand. But I have experienced enough in my own life to realize that there are cops that should not be cops. Now, I have no idea in this situation. I've not seen any of the body-worn camera. I took what Mr. Love said at face value.
And we know he was victorious
in court.
Yeah.
So again, I am not going to defend any of the actions taken that night, nor am I going to condemn him. So we're going to look at the full circumstance. But I think it's fascinating. If it is true that Stan Mortensen received these videos and saw what was going on and then attempted to use it against the defendant, Mr. Love, who's now the plaintiff, that's pretty messed up, Stan. So who is holding Stan Mortensen accountable? Who is holding Sheriff Bob Norris accountable? Who is holding Bruce Matari accountable? It's certainly not the KCRCC. And last I checked, all these guys were endorsed by the KCRCC, supported. We're starting to see patterns of behavior here where I wonder at what point the federal government, the FBI, as much as I loathe the FBI, at what point do we need the FBI in here to start looking at what all of these elected officials truly are doing?
I mean, it really is like they've gone completely rogue. And then you hear the other bit in there is you hear these stories from inside the jail. So when he was transported to KCSO, one thing he was referencing, and it was subtle in there, but he's talking about who he's surrounded with were a lot of very young. And I suppose it's typical to the career, but you have people in these positions where they're treating you like a criminal, and you've got a lot of guys in their 20s. I mean, to somebody like you or I, those are inexperienced kids that lack a lot of life experience.
Well, no, okay, yes, but let's put a couple things to rest. If you go to jail, it's not supposed to be comfortable.
Oh, it's not the Kootenai bed and breakfast?
Well, that's Bob Norris's side hustle, or John Padula's next one. Look, I've been in plenty of jails. Jails have all sorts of people running in and out of them 24/7, 365. The conditions aren't ideal. It's not supposed to be a place you like. Now, the Kootenai County Jail has an inspection every year. Former Sheriff Ben Wolfinger apparently is a contractor now, and he does all of the jail inspections for the state or whoever he's working for. And we hear all the time that Norris is failing his jail inspections, and I don't know at what point you get a federal lawsuit, because we've had ODs in there, we've had deaths, we've had all sorts of things going on. But back to when I was a cop, we bring guys in and out, and you have everybody from white collar crimes that are used to living in, luxury condos, all the way down to the addict on the street that has been homeless for many, many years.
It brings a lot of unusual, unsuspecting people together.
So back to the 20-year-old comment, though. 20-year-olds, and you're exactly right, 20-year-olds will mirror what their mentors are teaching them.
That is where I was going with
And we're going to talk next week, because I have the stats recently for the past 2 years, how many deputies at the jail have resigned, been terminated, or retired. You're going to like these numbers versus how many they're now bringing on board. There's a cultural problem inside the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, specifically at the jail. They have not been able to fix this now in the 6 years that Bob Norris has been there. And I look at the Deputy Sheriff's Association, now the Masonic Boys, the FOP, that fought hard to get him in, and he hasn't delivered. We received an email this week. We're going to read next week when we talk more about the jail, but it comes back to mentorship. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. If you don't have good, seasoned deputies that have worked all the rounds and understand that there's this balance between being public servants, taking care of the undesirables and the criminals, and still treating them with respect and dignity, versus also having to be tactically sound in your approach to people, and it's that fine balance. These kids aren't going to learn it. They're going to default to whatever is the current culture. I've heard a lot about the culture inside the jail. It's not good from reliable sources, those that were former employees and retired. But this is the result of good career law enforcement men and women who finally say, we've had enough of the culture, we're jettisoning out of here. And that leaves nothing but new boots constantly in positions where they're not trained properly, and they don't have the life experience, nor do they have the job experience to do the job correctly. So
Yeah, not supposed to be a comfortable place, but on the other hand, you just mechanically do your job at that point when you're booking people into a jail. Mechanically do your job. There is no reason to be unnecessarily cruel. Those consequences will come later once all of that's sorted out. So it just that it's a repeat. We hear this on repeat because, I mean, we get tips, communications from people who have been career employees. So I mean, we know what we know, and those things will be shared eventually when the time is right. But
that time's going to be next week.
We were going to do it tonight, but too many other things to cover. And then also just hearing it from people on that other side, not only employees of that Kootenai County jail situation, but people who have been on the receiving end of that when you find yourself being booked in, and what that experience is like. A lot of corruption being uncovered.
There's been a lot of hell raised this past week. It started about a week ago. We were on this live stream, and during the show, we get a message that pops up on, what do you call it, the running comments.
Mm-hmm.
And this comment came in. You can read it probably a little bit better than me, so have at it.
We had a comment come in on last week's live stream, and this is from a Corey Smith that happened at, specifically, we have the timestamp here, 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 3 seconds into the program last week when we were live. So Corey Smith says from his Facebook account, how about the interesting rumor about Bob Norris being involved in an accident a week or so ago? Under interesting circumstances, too. Middle of the day. Didn't hear anything about it, oddly enough. Look at the Safeway sign in front of Cane's Chicken on 95. It's destroyed. How fast was he going, and what could he have been going on making him out of control? Wonder what could have made him hit that. Not one word locally. Very, very interesting.
And we saw that comment, and we commented that, no, we don't really know anything about it. Shortly thereafter, after the live stream was over, we received this message.
Okay.
Page 2.
Yep. We got an email really probably around about the same time, because it came in at 8:29 p.m. While we were still live streaming. So it would have been around about the same time as that comment came in while we were live. So it says, longtime follower, was just wondering if you had heard any news on Sheriff Bob Norris involved in a car crash in CDA 516 around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, this is secondhand, but I was told from a witness on scene he was flying through the parking lot and hit the shopping center sign. Workers from a local fast food place then helped remove him from the car, and firsthand said he was hammered. No news anywhere about it. Guess his face was all smashed up. Can smashed that sign is seriously damaged. I'm just reading this as it's written. Interesting, there was nothing posted about it. Figured you may be able to see if there was any validity to it. Would have been the shopping center over by the new Cane's Chicken in CDA. Thanks for your time, a concerned citizen.
That was an interesting email. We get dozens of tips monthly.
Dozens of tips
monthly. Well, I don't want to overinflate.
Yeah, we don't.
But there are
a
considerable amount that come through email.
Yes.
So we're sitting down. You read that to me, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'll look into it at some point. It's not at the top of my priority list. Just a lot of stuff going on. The next morning, I began to get notices that somebody had gone down and attempted to contact, and did contact, an employee at Raising Cane's Chicken right there on the corner of Niter and 95, Highway 95. And I saw a couple clips, and, I always check my sources, no matter what Brad Krieger, Keith Bowe, or Surplus, or Pedum, or who else? Catherine, Lucky,
Aaron,
the name goes on and on, all the names going on.
Typical.
I made my contacts, and I inquired in law enforcement here. And what they told me was, yeah, this vehicle does not come back to Robert Bob Norris. This definitely was not him. Now, I did text this information to a couple people that wanted to know if I was following this and if I was going to report on it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. This isn't him. So during this interview, and you'll notice because there was nothing that we posted, but going back to the interview that started circulating around, Casey Whalen brought on this kid who worked, and I say kid because he's way younger than me. He's probably my kid's age, late teens, early 20s, I'm guessing. Had about a 20-minute interview. And during this interview, you have the kid, kind of similar to what the previous email said, named Bob Norris, and said that, there was a female passenger, and then went on to describe someone that was not Caucasian, went into detail about head hitting the glass, the airbag was deployed, but the person was slumped forward and bleeding like they went through the glass. And I'm just listening to this because I've worked collisions before, and I'm going, yeah, some of this stuff doesn't quite sound right. But again, not my problem. We're not reporting on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I get people, they're all upset. Wilson, why aren't you digging it deeper? Look at this. This is a conspiracy. This is a cover-up.
I had people messaging me too and wanting answers. And oh boy, you guys must sure know a lot. I can't believe what you must know. Really trying to, and I know that they're supporters. They're not looking, it wasn't an entrapment deal, but people figured, I guess, that our silence on the matter meant that we must have known more behind the scenes, more than what was being let out, and more than what people thought that they knew when they were. So we hear this interview, and the allegations is that the truck came across the intersection at 60 miles an hour. I don't know how anybody that hasn't been trained on seeing oncoming traffic like we had to do when we learned to work radar in our cars, how you know, but I guess it's a hunch. 60 miles an hour, jumps over the median on the shoulder and sidewalks, and if you really want to crashes into a light pole and then hits a sign, and it's a big old mess. And then immediately you have these kids that were working out at this fast food restaurant. They immediately rushed to give aid. It almost took a couple of them out. They pull who they're claiming is the sheriff. They smell alcohol. They pull a female passenger out, but they weren't able to fully do that. And the jaws of life had to come in and take her out. Yeah, and that was in this quick, like, couple of minute, quote unquote, interview that then was started circulating, and that then spread like wildfire. So let's then go to the next slide. You're going to have to keep these slides up. All right. We're going to go through them. We're going to talk through them because there's a point to this. This came out the next day. I'm believing that was like on Friday. So the report came out on Thursday. Our show was Wednesday, when somebody planted the seed for either us to take or for you, the viewer, to look into this. Here's what North Idaho News had to say. Would you please read that for me? Viral allegations against Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris are false. North Idaho News has received several messages regarding viral allegations claiming Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris was involved in a crash in Coeur d'Alene. According to information provided to North Idaho News by Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Dave Hager, the individual involved in the crash was identified as Kirk Kelso, not Sheriff Robert Norris. Chief Hager stated that the Idaho State Police took over the investigation because the crash was related to Highway 95 traffic. He also said he was informed by ISP that the crash was the result of a medical condition. And then goes on to say from... Of a what? Of a medical condition. Result of a medical condition. The result. From, and then goes on to say from Coeur d'Alene Police. So is this their exact quote we're led to believe? Here it says from Coeur d'Alene Police, and this part is in quotes. The individual in the crash was identified as Kirk Kelso. ISP ended up taking over the investigation because it was related to 95 traffic. I have not seen the document, but it was reported to me from ISP that the accident was the result of a medical condition. I hope this helps clear things up, end quote. North Idaho News did not publish the earlier allegations because we had not seen video, photos, or official records confirming the claims being made online. With serious allegations like this, the publishing someone's name without confirmation can create real liability, as some of us are sure to find out shortly.
Ooh.
And then there's more, but
there is a lot in this.
Yeah.
So hold that up there just for a minute. That one right there.
Yeah.
I want to ask these questions. Does anyone know? I was not able to find it. I went to Coeur d'Alene City site. I went to the Coeur d'Alene PD site. I went to Facebook page. Can anybody find where this release from ISP, this statement that was made to North Idaho News occurred?
Good point.
I've not yet seen
question.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to assume at this point that nothing official came out in the way of a press release, press conference, email, letter, whatever, to the way, law enforcement professionals are supposed to when they get an event like this. Distribute it wide and far, or is it far and wide? Far and wide.
Whatever you want.
They're communicating directly with Mike Petum, North Idaho News. Huh. They claim that there was a medical emergency, and they named the driver Kirk Kelso. Interesting. So now let's revisit. You have the interview that's going online. There's people that are running back and forth. They're telling their stories and what they think's going on. There's starting to be a lot of uncertainty, speculations of cover up. This is how these things start out. We haven't said anything yet, but you have North Idaho News that comes out immediately and starts virtue signaling. We just didn't feel like we had good, credible evidence. We never reported on this. And some people are going to find out quick. And by the way, Chief Hager, or I guess he's not chief anymore. So maybe it's still Captain Hager with Coeur d'Alene Police. This is what he had to say, but he can't talk about it because it's ISP's investigation. But he had enough to tell what ISP was going to say that he spoke on their behalf. I don't know. All right, let's go to the next slide. To make matters worse, you then have this Zach Sifford, blink twice if you are being held against your will. This is the second shittiest press release from the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office I have ever seen. In fact, of all press releases by what's supposed to be a professional organization, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, all these little Freemasons running around that are in the FOP. Apparently, they don't know how to write very well.
No, this is like a junior high school project.
I'm going to recall Pennie and Collinson's lawsuit or tort claim against Norris in 2024, and he put out another media release where he put a $10,000 bounty against her. So this has this flavor to it. Go ahead and read what Bob Norris had to say on May 29th, which was last Friday.
Yeah, it will do. The idea is if you take all emotion out of it and you're reporting on facts, that's what you should be getting in a press release. So just keep that in mind when you hear how this comes out. Titled, Drunk Driving and Crash Allegation Against Sheriff Norris, False. Sheriff not in the state of Idaho when incident occurred. Goes on to say, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, on or about May 29th, 2026, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office was made aware of a false report of a drunk driving incident that occurred on or around May 16th, 2026 in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The reporting alleged Sheriff Norris was involved in the crash and was intoxicated. A restaurant employee, London Eden, of Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, went viral for an interview he gave to an unidentified source that Eden pulled a drunk Sheriff Bob Norris out of a crashed red Tundra. Eden was wearing a Cane's uniform, Cane's hat, and holding Cane's equipment during the interview, which appeared to have taken place in the drive-thru of the Cane's restaurant. Eden, in a subsequent interview where he identified himself as a Cane's employee, said, quote, Sheriff Norris almost killed me and another employee, end quote. There's one problem with this narrative. Sheriff Bob Norris was not in the state of Idaho on the date and time of this incident. The sheriff has reached out to the sole occupant of the vehicle and wished him a full recovery. The sheriff said what should have been an evening of celebration at his daughter's high school graduation event turned into people asking him if he was recovering from his drunk driving crash at the Cane's restaurant in Coeur d'Alene. The actions of this Cane's employee, keyboard warriors, and the two-bit so-called online journalist or journalists ruined what should have been a memorable evening for our family. Note that that is not in quotes. I would say, anybody who's gone to school for journalism or is learning how to write a press release or formulate it, I mean, at bare minimum, Zach, it is quite obvious you need to actually start running this through a proofreader and chat GPT.
I got a different take on this.
No,
we're gonna go sideways on this one.
Make your take while they went.
Here's what I believe.
You have your take as to why they went in this direction.
No.
That's not what I mean.
I don't think he wrote this. I think Norris actually wrote this and told Zach to put his name on it.
Oh, and that's what the problem is?
Yes, that's my whole point to this. I don't buy for a minute that Zach actually wrote this, because I think Zach's a little more professional than this. Now, let's look at this horrible statement. I'm a victim. Sheriff Bob Norris, I am a victim. I was not at the wheel of this DUI crash. It's all false. And you know what? This Canes, and the guy that worked for Canes. How many times did he mention Canes?
I don't know.
As if that was really...
I'm going to go get some chicken.
If that was at all germane to the conversation. Really? I mean, is this what a professional sheriff that's supposed to protect everybody's rights as found in the Bill of Rights, equal protection under the law, should be acting like in a public press release? I mean, you could word it a little bit different, but then he's a victim. I was not in the state. Was he over in Spokane? I don't know. I don't care where he was. But he was at a wedding.
So do you think that's why the tense changes, the past tense, present, or the perspective of who is speaking, why it changes in this quote unquote press release? Because it's Bob Norris that wrote it himself, because he didn't put himself in quotes.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this because I said it incorrect. And this is part of the problem that I've seen in all the discussions online. He just says, I was out of state at the time. We have heard that he was at a graduation at the time of the crash. We're talking about May 16th, not last week, not May 28th, not May 29th. So he just says he was not in the state, but he's a victim again because he had to endure, as a public official, everybody inquiring about his welfare and his boo-boos while he was trying to enjoy his daughter's, I think it's stepdaughters.
It is, but the other reason this made it worse and created more confusion because it was so poorly written. Written on May 29th, 2026, and he's referencing being out of town when the accident occurred on or around May 16th. And then toward the end of this press release, which is more of the I'm the victim. This is the I am the victim statement that is being made. He then references what should have been an evening of celebration, but didn't establish, didn't make the switch there. He didn't establish the change in dates or from which date to the next when he was where.
That's why Norris wrote
it made rumors worse because people were
had a hangover from his daughter's graduation the night previously, I'm guessing. Okay. Couple interesting things again that I want to bring you back down to. So number one, he's a vindictive little fuck when it comes to Canes, as if the
viewer discretion advised.
As if the restaurant is liable because one of their employees, give me a break, Bob.
Yeah. You
treat your Tam's hamburger buddies this way. Okay. He says he reached out to the sole occupant. Now, it's already been established from the common narrative that the person behind the wheel of this wrecked Tundra was a former Kootenai County Sheriff Deputy Kirk Kelso. Kirk was at Kootenai County Sheriff's Office for a very long time. That's something that everyone needs to be paying attention to and filing it away in their file cabinet of their mind. But Bob is very specific. Now, Hager, speaking on behalf of ISP, remember, they are the ones that come out and say it's Kirk Kelso and it's a medical issue. Okay, so they're already spilling parts of the investigation.
Except they don't do an official release. They supposedly.
Well, we're believing it's Hager. Okay, so
supposedly.
Captain Hager, you are more than welcome to come and give an official statement if Mike Petum and North Idaho News is not accurate. But Norris is reaching out to the sole occupant. See, they're starting to paint this narrative, right? But it's still under investigation. Now, you have another important issue. Let's go to the next slide. All this is going on, and my thought is, okay, we're going to find out real quick. There's people. Was it Bob Norris? The witness that was talking to Casey Whalen claims that he heard somebody saying it was Bob in the vehicle. Again, my personal belief at this moment in time is that it was not Bob Norris. I don't think he had anything to do with the actual incident itself with the crash.
That is your personal belief.
Personal belief. Subject to facts changing. What could clear things up really quick is, in my opinion, 911 audio and dispatch radio audio. Because you're going to hear when fire and deputies or law enforcement arrive on the scene, they're usually going to describe the wreck and how many injuries, and they're going to call for medical assistance. There's going to be clues in there. We're going to be able to tell if it was only one vehicle that crashed into an immovable object, aka a sign. You would expect, unless there was a bystander there, somebody, the pedestrian that got hit, that if it was only one person, they're only going to reference to one person. So there was things in that audio that I wanted to hear because I thought this could clear things up really, really quick. We know it's going to take a long time to get body-worn camera footage. Remember, folks, this happened in May of last month, several weeks ago. We all know that you can't get records on a dime, so you can't come investigate this a week ago Thursday and expect to immediately have all the records and body-worn camera and all that stuff immediately if you as a citizen go to request that. I sent this out on Monday, I believe it was, and I just said, I asked for the audio, 911 and radio dispatch. This is what the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office had to say to ISP because I was denied. I challenged the denial and I wanted the proof of who denied my request. This is from Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. Can you read that, please?
Says, good morning. Please see attached request. CDA PD transferred this incident to you, and then with the incident number. May we have permission to release the 911 audio? We appreciate your help, and then thank you. And it's
Next
signed
page.
Kootenai's Records Division. Good morning. A follow-up email. Good morning. Thanks for checking in regarding releasing the 911 audio for this incident. At this time, ISP is still investigating the incident and interviewing witnesses, and we ask that you not release records at this time. And that's thanks from Julie West.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was denied because they are still investigating the incident and they're interviewing witnesses. So we're going to come back full circle to this confusion and why it is my belief that ISP bungled this. Kootenai County Sheriff's Office has bungled this. Coeur d'Alene Police has bungled this. Let me tell you why. When you get into an incident like this, where you start drawing attention and people start wondering what's going on, and you get these narratives, whether it's Dave Hager, allegedly, naming the victim and the reason for the accident, and then you have Kootenai County Sheriff's Office coming out and going, we talked to the sole occupant. A lot of different narratives, what's going on. It behooves ISP, who has taken over as primary investigators for this incident, to do what we see in many large-scale incidents where, for the reason of transparency, you can release certain things to the public so the public understands they're not being snowballed, nothing's being covered up. This would have been a perfect time for ISP to have come out and set an official narrative, an official press release. They surely were looking at the temperature of the community with all the speculation and everything else that was going on, false information, good information, all of it mixed together. And they should have released the 911 call, and they should have released the audio at a minimum and body-worn camera footage. Now, if they're still investigating, this leads me to yet another issue to reinforce what my belief is. If it was a medical emergency, like what Hager was saying through ISP, then it should be a shut case. This should have not been anything that took, generally, I'm talking generally, this should not have taken more than a couple days to close out. I used to do these collisions, and half the time, these collisions for something similar where it was just strictly somebody had a heart attack or something, it was a quick closeout. Nothing there that needed to be investigated anymore. But the issue is that you already had the Idaho State Patrol through Hager already say it was a medical incident. So when ISP then continues to say we're not going to release records because it's still under investigation, then perhaps what should have been said was ISP is taking over as primary investigators because of the location of the crash. They're thoroughly investigating it. Nothing to report at this time, which includes we're not going to say how many drivers or the driver and if there's any occupants. We're not going to say whether we suspect there was alcohol on board or prescription drugs. The issue is that you have 3 law enforcement agencies that are incapable, they're incompetent to put out a unified statement. What the hell, Dave Hagar? What the hell? If this is really true and you're giving your source to Mike P. Toom, what the hell? Again, I can't find an official statement from Coeur d'Alene Police, and if it's that freaking hard to find, then you're not publishing it in the right places. As of yesterday, it was not on your Facebook page. It wasn't on your city website. Same thing with Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. This is the 3-ring circus that you see with local law enforcement here where none of them communicate. None of them can hold a freaking press conference together. And ultimately what this leads is it leads people to believe there's a cover-up taking place because you have a former deputy that everything's hush-hush on. Now, I'm not absurd to say that the minute that law enforcement arrived on scene that they immediately say, oh, we're going to cover this up. That's not the way it works. I don't believe those on scene did that. But what I believe is there were other circumstances that led up that once this cat was out of the bag, especially since it was a former longstanding deputy with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, there needs to be even greater transparency. But none of them could get their story right. Bob is sure as hell not going to coordinate with ISP or with Coeur d'Alene before he puts out his half-ass written whatever that thing's called. But let's now go on and discuss more of the issue. One of the 3 conclusions we just discussed, whether it was an impairment investigation that's still ongoing, whether it truly was a medical and should have been closed by now, what the hell exactly is going on, or is there a cover-up because it was a Kootenai County Sheriff's deputy? Which leads me, really, to our very next point. Mm-hmm. Why was North Idaho News uninterested in reporting? Play that clip number 3.
Okay.
It was coming up hard and fast. I didn't give you a key.
Dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
That's right. Complete lack of respect for the law. Well, sometimes the law needs to remind people they deserve to be respected. This leads us to our next point. Why was North Idaho News uninterested in reporting? Pull that slide up if you would, please. Many people across the community have reported that they, on that date and time, sent their tips into North Idaho News for coverage. Now, I know I have seen these updates. People will send tips in for all sorts of things. North Idaho News is reported on, hemorrhoids. I mean, they don't give a shit what they report on generally.
Literally, that's what draws attention to this. Go on.
So let's look at some of the tips that were put into the North Idaho News.
Oh, this is one of them. There is a citizen that submits to this because they know, hey, these accidents happen, and in almost real time, North Idaho News gets access to this stuff, and that's how they make their money. That's how they monetize that page. So they want, if it bleeds, it leads, bro. And that is what they're in the business of doing. So as this accident then is being reported to them, probably nearly in real time, they're a resident or is submitting this to North Idaho News, and their response in this private chat says, I never heard a thing about it.
And do we know if that's PTOM answering that? Or
there's no way to, my guess is the way these pages operate is that you've got multiple admins managing this, especially as the page viewership grows, and they've got so many things around the community that they're posting and promoting and all of that. So no, there's no way to specifically tie
somebody
this.
Says, I never heard a thing about it. And the response was, no one has heard anything about it, but it's 100% true. They covered it all up. The photo I send is from this morning.
Yeah.
He could have killed numerous people if that concrete block wouldn't have stopped the truck. Is there a process to get a police report? And then allegedly nothing else. Go to the next one.
All right, the next one.
May 16th, 4:03 p.m.
Yeah, this one's got the timestamp, so that's outstanding because that substantiates that vehicle's still in place where that incident occurred on that date at that time, shows the roads wet and all that jazz. So that photo is being submitted to North Idaho News. And at this point, you get somewhat of an automated response from North Idaho News and says, one of our representatives will do their best to get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, that's going to be an automated response. So they could then say, well, a real person, a human being, didn't necessarily see that message. But what
1 in a million, right?
Yeah. Okay. The other one was definitely a real-time response. So what that is establishing is people were submitting information about this accident on the date.
And North Idaho News wasn't reporting.
They were not. They were aware of it and making statements like, I've never heard anything about that.
Let's stop here.
Stopping there.
Pull that back up.
All right.
Now let's go ahead and pull that off screen for a moment. Let's have a conversation. Let's ask a question. North Idaho News doesn't report on this. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose a significant collision takes place
in a high profile area,
visibility area?
Yes.
And there's no interest whatsoever to report. Why is that, Mike Petum? I think some of you know the reason. And let's go along a theory of mine, hypothesis, if you will. First responders on the scene come to the conclusion that the driver is one of their former buddies, part of the department. And the word got out through the Norris Mafia inside the Fraternal Order of Police, the little Masons running that place, that they should not talk, that North Idaho News should not talk about this incident. Scrub it. Okay, so not only do you have all the confusion of people saying there's cover up by law enforcement, which
they're already saying it.
I don't believe that there was a cover up, just to be clear, of the initial responders on scene, those working the collision. I just don't think that. But now you have what we've already stated is the inability to articulate to the public. And let's bring on, well, why is the news organization where Mike Petum, who is the face of the North Idaho News, claimed in 2024, we still have the Facebook screenshot that he writes press releases for Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. He's with Norris on everything. He's the one that filmed Norris standing in front of the burning Wolf Lodge. We're led to believe that somehow there's not a coincidence, or that it's rather just a coincidence that They didn't want to report on an incident that happened to involve a former deputy. If you want to talk about a cover-up, my guess is that is the cover-up. Well, Friday, after all this is melting down, and I'm Paul. You and I had a conversation about this at lunch on Friday.
Yeah.
And it was robust going back and forth. And I just said, no, I don't buy this. There's something that doesn't seem right about the conspiracy of what people are thinking, that it was Norris. And I gave my reasons why. And at the conclusion of it, you know, I think I was able to make my point pretty clearly, having been a former cop, knowing how these things work. But we chose not to enter into the fray was the ultimate decision. We just weren't going to be there.
Yeah. And but just to reiterate, one of the reasons the conversation between you and I got heated wasn't as much.
Say heated.
It wasn't as much.
It was spirited. It was spirited. It wasn't heated.
Yeah. It wasn't as much. If you take me out to Thai food, I'm good. It wasn't as much, okay, who was in the vehicle, or that Dawna's going to argue with Dan. I think it was Norris. And you said, I don't think it was. It wasn't. That really wasn't it. The bottom line was, if you don't have official sources coming out and giving the facts, then they're stirring the pot. You already have an issue all the way back on May 16th when you have people in the county who witnessed the accident, had photos, and were submitting it to North Idaho News, who we've already proven has ties back to and direct communication to Bob Norris in the sheriff's office, and brags about it.
A video of him campaigning for Norris holding a sign.
Yes, we got all the stuff, but you already, back on May 16th, you have people who are frantic because they can't understand why no official sources or who typically reports in the community are touching this thing. So now you have official sources that just by default of saying, we're just going to pretend this didn't happen, or whatever it is, we're not making an official statement. You have people that are becoming frantic all the way back on May 16th. So by the time then this hits public airwaves, which we've showed, and you probably need to go back to that for a refresher course, but we're getting tips on our live stream last week about then this accident.
Well, we're going to talk about
and you're getting to that.
So this is where
my issue always was more of, if nobody officially is making a statement, they're wanting people to be frantic for a reason. That was always
that is a valid point. That is a valid point, especially in the Bob Norris ruling era, and I say ruling on purpose. Okay, we get home from our Thai food, getting ready to enjoy some nice whiskey and cigars and relax. And we get a phone call. And I get a phone call from somebody that I knew during the campaign, didn't really keep up with them. I mean, we just were acquaintances, not necessarily friends. And this person says, hey, in the course of the conversation, I want to tell you an odd conversation I had today. I was posting online about this Bob Norris, Cane's Chicken, Kirk Kelso incident. Mm-hmm. And I get a phone call from, and this is all allegedly at this point, I understand it, but it's going to fit a pattern, from Brett Surplus. And Brett Surplus tells me, oh man, take that down. Take that down, because there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be defamation lawsuits that are coming up. And then goes on to tell this individual, hey, you know who Dan Wilson is? The individual says, yeah, I don't really know who it is. They played coy. And he says, well, this whole thing right now was set up to entrap Dan Wilson in a defamation lawsuit. Interesting. This person doesn't live in Kootenai County, calls me up out of the blue, has this interesting conversation where Brett Surplus, he's failed at a lot of things, but most recently he failed at his run for county commissioner. He's failed in love. He's failed in finance. He's failed in business. Serial failure. Wasn't a cop more than a year before he couldn't do that anymore. And he is making this claim. Now, do I think that Brett Surplus and Mike Petum and others caused the crash. There's no part of me that believes the event. So just so we're clear.
No.
But it's interesting timing that the tip came on this page about 1 week ago tonight. And by the very next day, the story was going out of control. And Surplus went on to say that this was a defamation trap for Wilson's and Casey Whalen was already fucked. That was a quote, which I don't think he is, but according to Surplus, who would fail at being an attorney as well, apparently was adamant that this was a trap set up. So here's my question. Who is they? Who is they that is setting up Dan and Dawna Wilson? That's a question we should be asking. And what interest do they have in entrapping me and Dawna? You guys have the same kind of questions that I do? Who is they? Why do they want to do this? Was the live and email tip an attempt to set us up by getting us to dive into this? And did Mike Petum know in advance that they had not reported on this story back on May 16th, and they realized it would be a great catalyst because people had tried to report there was going to start a conspiracy, and they just assumed that Dan Wilson was going to jump on it and start buying off on everything without checking my facts like I always do, no matter how many of you liars, which we proved how many of you are liars. Shelley Kroll, Stephanie Fetzer, Keith Bowe, Brad Cree several weeks ago. That's now in memoriam. That's the question I have. Was this truly an elaborate scheme? Why would this person call us up? None of this makes sense, folks. I'm just telling you right now. You already know it. It is a shit show, but it's a collage of chaos that was put into motion, and somebody started it. And I think it's fascinating that we were contacted by this individual that we weren't expecting. We'd already stayed out of it. Let's go to that next slide. North Idaho News, May 16th. The next one. Right there. 5 days ago. Brett Surplus. That is why you sit back and let people hang themselves. Let's not forget who the main source was that started it. Defamation cases be stacking up this week. Hey, Surplus.
No.
You warthog-faced buffoon. You failed once again, along with Mike Petum. Or is this a pattern of yours where you just run your mouth to impress women? I mean, Reese, you know, the lady that you were shacked up with having sex when you told her that you wanted to role play according to the police reports and according to Reese, call you daddy. Do we have that video, call you daddy?
Did you send me that one? Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Put on their Facebook. Vote for daddy. Vote for daddy. Vote for daddy. I think it'd be hilarious. It'd be awesome. Like, yeah. With my sidekicks, John Graham and Casey Whalen. Yeah.
So that was Surplus 2 years ago when we broke the Rathdrum police reports where he was accused of not only not returning money, but also other things, including sexual issues. We won't talk about them tonight, but you can go back to our May 2024 episode when I was running for sheriff. And in this, one of his, the female that had filed the police report had shown text messages that we're in possession of, that they had exchanged between each other, where Brett Surplus, while he was using this woman for money, she was giving him money to pay his truck payment and I think it was real estate school. At the same time was sexual favors. And apparently, well, I'm not even going to go into it, but daddy was one of the things that was alleged. So I'll leave it at that. So you have Surplus that thinks that he is hot shit. He's a zero. He still is a loser, but he's got a vendetta, right? Because he didn't like the fact that he didn't win that election. And we rode him hard, but he's always trying to pretend that he is relevant, not a good dude. And that leads me into, I think it's funny because he's literally after this conversation with the person that he says, hey, Casey Whelans, fuck, this was an attempt to entrap Dan and Dawna Wilson into this defamation lawsuit. Then a couple days later, he's running his mouth saying, hey, there's lawsuits. You shouldn't be doing that. Watch what's incoming. So he appears to be in the know. He wants to be that guy. Mm-hmm. Which leads me into the final segment of tonight. We started out at the beginning playing a video from Jessica Height, formerly McClintock. She is the sister of Ryan McClintock. Let's go ahead and play this video again. We're going to set up a little history, and we're going to talk about Brett Surplus and what we have on him right now and why I think the FBI needs to finally come into Kootenai County. Let's take a watch of this video.
About this narrative that's being pushed in Kootenai County that Dan and Dawna Wilson are co-conspirators in this whole thing with my brother. The fact is that Ryan needed intervention, he needed support, he needed help, and he was denied that. Dan and Dawna Wilson, they may have known Ryan. Ryan may have had Dan on his podcast. That doesn't mean that these two people are co-conspirators. Within a few minutes of my brother being arrested, I was reached out to. I was asked to get my brother's phone. I was asked to report back to that person all of the phone calls, text messages. I was asked to reach out to the detective and push this same narrative. I was asked to get on social media and blame Dan and Dawna Wilson. And ultimately, I just want my brother to get help. I want my nephew to have his dad come home. This has nothing to do with Dan and Dawna Wilson. And for the people that are pushing this narrative, just know it's the same people that were in there provoking my brother on social media the morning of his arrest. These are people that are tied with Bob Norris. These are people that are tied to local law enforcement. And like I said in previous videos, I really question why the day was handled the way it was. And now to have this narrative being pushed so hard in Kootenai County when it really should be about mental health reform, intervention, how to prevent crimes, how to keep the community safe. You know, it's just a huge slap in the face, not only to me, but to any other family that's gone through something similar.
Let's go down memory lane. It's about 2 months ago. Did you have something you were going to interject? Okay, I wasn't cutting you off. The timeline is April 4th, 2026 at approximately 6:07 p.m. Ryan McClintock, after several days of posting videos online on several social media pages, alleging that there is a vast pedophile cover-up at local churches, and he named several of these churches. He was posting this for several days. There were a few welfare checks performed by Post Falls Police Department, including one of them where rather than take him in for a psych eval at the local hospital, rather than do that, they chose to take his firearms away or get somebody to take his firearms. They were that concerned, but that was the follow-up. These videos continued to circulate into Saturday. And on Saturday, at this time that I just mentioned before, Saturday the 4th at 8:07, after all of that took place, Ryan contacts law enforcement, 911 in Post Falls, and he declared his intent to go to Coeur d'Alene PD and or the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, since nobody is going to do anything about it. And he was going to bring his baseball bat, and he was also going to arrest Sheriff Norris. And for the next 30 minutes, he magically eludes Post Falls PD, Idaho State Patrol, Coeur d'Alene Police, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. Nobody has any units on location at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office so that they could intervene when they saw him come up, park across Government Way, cross 5 lanes of traffic in the broad daylight with a bat, and proceeds to break windows on the side parallel facing Government Way. I'm going to note that nobody from the jail, they're all sworn deputies too. Nobody apparently listens to the radio, knows what's coming on for 30 minutes. Nobody's prepared, and they allow Ryan, my belief is they allowed Ryan to cause the damage that he did instead of stopping him.
Seems that way, yeah. Does.
He's taken into custody at roughly 6:37 p.m., so 30 minutes from start to end. He makes statements to Coeur d'Alene police officers, the arresting officers. He talks about an anonymous source that was giving him this information because he was relaying all of his concerns about what was going on with the churches. And then he also makes another statement. Now let's go ahead and slide back up here. Just real quick here. We'll go one more forward just to see if I may not have anything at the moment. Can you advance it one, or are we having problems?
Well, I'm advancing it. What are you looking for?
Let's hold it right there.
Okay.
So right here, hold it. I'm going to talk through this. You have, and it looks like maybe we advanced a ton of slides. Let me go back here. Yeah, sorry. Went through a few too many. Go ahead and take that off for a minute.
What are you looking for?
I'm not sure. I may have goofed my slides.
Give me a clue, and I might be able to help you out here.
So the timeline. He's taken into custody at 6:37, makes statements to Coeur d'Alene police about the anonymous source, and then he states that Dan and Dawna Wilson were in communication with him.
So
his phone was seized.
You're saying Ryan McClintock states that Dan and Dawna Wilson. And who does he state that? Who is he?
To the arresting Coeur d'Alene police officer. Thank you.
Yep.
So then he is booked. His phone is seized. He was actually making a video of himself breaking the windows at the time, apparently live streaming that. And he was booked into the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office jail on terrorism acts and malicious injury. And allegedly his vehicle was impounded. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and we will pull that slide back up. Let's go back up to that slide. All right, right here. I just want for context you guys to see this. This text came from Brett Surplus to me just a couple days after the event took place on April 4. Why does this matter? For two things. One, I want you to see the picture. See that it says maybe Brett Surplus. Brett Surplus contacted me weeks prior to the McClintock event, and he told me that we were going to get together to settle our differences man to man. And he was being a big baby and insistent, and I basically said, pound sand, I don't have time. If you can't agree to my terms and can't help you. So then after our April 8th broadcast, he texts me this and he says, I'm going to call you out on your on your cluelessness. My comments weren't about you. The first one was, if you know, you know, referring to his constant videos. And the second is referring to the Coeur d'Alene PD and Post Falls PD coordinating after the last video. And he's talking about me discussing statements that he had made online that we were discussing during our live show on April 8th. And he continues by saying, not everything is about you. Anytime you like to apologize for assuming, feel free. My response to him is, I don't negotiate with sexual deviants. Haven't heard from him since, but I wanted to establish that picture up there from iPhone messages is from Brett Surplus. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So back to the timeline, we have Saturday after the arrest. Here's this text message. It comes from Brett Surplus to Jessica Height, Ryan McClintock's sister. At the top, you're going to see a John Padula contact file. And Surplus says, allegedly, again, I mean, you can tell by the profile picture, it matches the message I got on mine. John's 100% on board and is expecting your call. He's texting this to Jessica. And he goes on to say, and Norris is on the same page as long as Coeur d'Alene PD hasn't confiscated his phone for evidence. And yes, they want to know Dawna's involvement because that's conspiracy. She goes on, go ahead and read hers in the blue.
Jessica says, okay, cool. Thank you so much for your help. Okay, so do I call the jail and ask? I will call John on Monday unless I should reach out sooner.
Bob will find out if Coeur d'Alene is keeping the phone. Now we're going to pause right there. So this again is happening at 9 p.m., roughly 3 hours after the arrest, 2.5 hours after the arrest. Jessica gets this text from Brett Surplus at 9:07 with Padula's contact saying John is on board and expecting your call. John Padula, you know, the guy that was just at the same time running for county commissioner. Somebody that we were frequently enlightening the public about the many issues with him and his past and his lack of discernment. Norris, this is an interesting statement. Norris is on the same page, wants Ryan's phone, and want to know Dawna's involvement for conspiracy. Okay, so Brett Surplus is relaying information that he allegedly is getting from Norris himself. So him and Norris were talking about this whole situation. Somehow Surplus is the proxy to contact Jessica, who apparently they knew each other from the past. It's kind of weird for a sheriff to be using a non-sworn law enforcement officer to carry messages about an active arrest. Oh, by the way, by an agency where your agency wasn't the arresting investigative agency. Interesting. Let's go to the next slide.
Do you know, before we move to the next slide, and does it matter, we can't talk about it right now, but when it says, and John, obviously John Padula contact card being sent in a text message there, and we're mid-conversation between what is presumed to be Brett Surplus and we know is Jessica Height, which is Ryan McClintock's sister. Right. And it says John's 100% on board.
Yeah, so there was a phone call conversation that took place, apparently, before this text message. We were told the contents of the conversation in quite a lot of detail, but apparently I'm not going to get into all the sources. When this comes to discovery, it definitely is going to matter.
I just knew when people see, because Padula is such a known name now.
Well, here's a question. Why the fuck would Padula be hot on the trails while he's busy running for office, want to immediately contact Jessica through Surplus or however the hell they're doing it, maybe through Bob Norris, because Bob Norris and him were friends. Norris was at Padula's election night watch party. Mm-hmm. So you have Padula now inserting himself, because what, they're going to take Ryan. They don't even have any idea whether Ryan has issues due to a pre-existing medical condition, mental health issues, substance abuse. It's too early. Padula shouldn't even really freaking know, but he's there within hours offering services to try to convince the court to allow Ryan.
Well, and that's what we're presuming, because we don't, unless you were going there. That's why I was asking the question, because it's obviously mid-conversation, but at bare minimum, we can say, obviously, John Padula is part of this conversation, who has inserted himself into this Ryan McClintock event. There's something that he's on board with, and it's related to the actions of Ryan McClintock, who at this point is in Kootenai County Jail.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep that up on the screen. Mm-hmm. Sunday. So again, Bob, it finishes out with him, Brett Surplus, claiming that Bob will find out if Coeur d'Alene is keeping the phone. Sunday, the 5th of April, it's Easter Sunday. Social media is full of comments on this event. We brought this up numerous times before, but we're going to bring it up yet again. Fat and undisciplined Brad Cree posts this on Easter Sunday. So question, did Wilson's wife have text communications encouraging this behavior? Inquiring minds want to know, would that also not be a crime? There's more to this story than meets the eye. 2 days ago, Wilson's wife, Theresa, posted this on Easter Sunday. So question, did Wilson's wife have text communications encouraging this behavior? Inquiring minds want to know, would that also not be a crime? There's more to this story than meets the eye. interesting that Brad Cree wanted to know about you, Dawna, texting.
Mm-hmm.
At 11:30, go ahead and bring up the next slide. And by the way, this right here, let's back up a little bit, because Brad Cree just talked about the texting. This was in the PC affidavit that theoretically should have never even hit the judge's bench. Maybe, I don't even know how the prosecutor could have gone it that quick. I mean, it's a weekend. But the PC affidavit, go back to the next page, specifically quotes, this is what the arresting officer has to say in his PC affidavit about Ryan. In his narrative, Ryan told me that Dan Wilson has provided him information about the Candlelight Church. I asked if Ryan and Dan Wilson speak about this type of stuff, and he told me yes. I asked Ryan if Dan Wilson was knowledgeable about today's incident. Ryan told me Dan Wilson was like, I cannot have any part of it. I asked Ryan if he had any communicated his plans for today with Dan Wilson, and he told me he mentioned it to him, but Dan Wilson, again, told him he could not be involved. Again, we've already debunked this. I have never had a communication with him since I was on his podcast. Ryan told me he communicated with Dan's wife, Dawna, to communicate to him. Ryan told me this communication was via text. So again, Easter Sunday, less than 24 hours after the arrest, when this paperwork should be sitting in a prosecutor's office getting ready to go before the judge, somehow this information is, I believe, leaked to Brad Cree and others. Brad happens to be the one that take one for the team.
Because the point is, Brad Cree was posting this before
on Easter Sunday, day before first appearance for Ryan,
before any of those documents or anything that had been written in any kind of report, before any of that would have been available to the public. So that is the point.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on.
Oh, you're pushing buttons.
I'll go to this one.
You're pushing buttons.
So again, on Sunday, here these text messages come again from Brett to Jessica. Go ahead. It starts out.
So what would be from Jessica? It says, okay, I will text him now, then, and just leave it open.
Again, I'm not really certain who that was. He says, perfect. Phone has been taken as evidence. So Surplus apparently knows law enforcement privileged information. And he says, you'll need to contact Coeur d'Alene PD and connect with the investigator and let him or her know that Dawna Wilson may have played a fueling part. Need to find out how many texts there are, how many phone calls, the duration of the calls, etc.
And then Jessica responds, any way to find out where his car is?
Brett Surplus comes back and says, same, Coeur d'Alene PD would have that info most likely. They called the next rotational record. That's interesting, right? He's admitting Coeur d'Alene PD, file that away for a few minutes down the road here.
Jessica says, okay, that makes sense.
So that was Sunday. Monday comes around. There's a first appearance in the PC affidavit that we just read. Went before the judge. Judge found that there was PC and ordered Ryan to remain in custody. I think there's like a $1 million bond. My understanding is he's been in isolation for the full 2 months. They did a mental eval on him. I'm not going to get into where he currently sits because I don't want to jeopardize anything there with his current court hearings. But Saturday to Sunday, a lot goes on. Monday, PC affidavit, first appearance, judge's orders. Interesting fact, the judge places a no contact order against Ryan, not to contact Bob Norris and other defendants. I believe they were pastors. So that's very similar to a protection order. It means don't talk to the individuals that you're not supposed to be talking to. And that was done allegedly because his claim that he was going to go and arrest the sheriff that led him to go down and start his attack on the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. So it's interesting to me that early in that morning, so this is Monday, I get a message on one of my social media pages that Jessica wanted to get in touch with us. And I said, you know what? We'll call you later from this phone. We call, and the call was never answered. We were ghosted. So Wednesday comes around. You have another volley of text messages coming through. Brett Surplus says, screen record at 7. He thinks my comment about them coordinating about him, like I told you to do that. I'm trying to see if I went too far.
Again, the text messages that Dan's reading through now are between Brett Surplus and then Jessica Height, who is Ryan McClintock's sister.
I failed to show another previous text. I hope I can find it, but he basically is telling them, hey, take a look at the Wilsons are going to do their podcast. Watch what they're going to have to say. They're making it all about them.
Okay, so it'd be right above because then he says at the top of this one, he says screen record it at 7. So the reference would be to us going live at 7 o'clock on Wednesday.
So Brad in real time, around 8:26, text Jessica. He says he thinks my comments about them coordinating it is about him. Like I told you, the coordinating was with Coeur d'Alene PD and Post Falls PD. See how he always thinks it's about him.
Jessica says, yeah, I'm just so sad that it's so politicized.
Surplus says, this is what they do. None of my comments on that post were about them. The if you know is referring to your brother's videos.
And then she says, I get that.
They need, and Brett goes on, they need to quit thinking every comment is about them. Freaking retarded.
And Jessica says, sorry, Brett, he is spitting facts.
Yeah, but he always has to try and insinuate shit because he's clueless. And as far as his car, you need to contact Captain Jeremy Heil. Well, wait a second. Didn't he just previously say Coeur d'Alene PD was in charge of the impound of Ryan's car?
Yeah.
And now he's saying contact Commander Captain Jeremy Heil.
Mm-hmm.
She says, thank you. He says, you bet. Give me a buzz when you got some free time. The sheriff, this now going into Thursday morning, but let's back up. Let's go ahead and play that video clip 4. So I told you that Jessica had reached out to us. We tried calling her. She didn't want to talk to us. And then we started getting screenshots of Jessica insinuating that we had manipulated Ryan on some social media pages. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video.
He portrayed.
Oh, by the way, Jessica, Stephanie Fetzer campaigned for Bob Norris, the sheriff. Just in case you don't understand all of the tie-ins, many of the people that your brother was talking about that he has issues with are direct friends of Stephanie Fetzer. So be very careful, as Donna's saying, of who is steering the narrative. We got your message. We are absolutely willing to talk with you. You can record the conversation. I don't care. But we definitely are more than happy to have a discussion with you. And I noticed that. So that was, again, us responding in live time. That was our show where we were refuting all the claims that we had been involved. We included our revelation that we had voluntarily contacted Coeur d'Alene police and talked to the detective in charge of the case and voluntarily offered up all of our communications so that they could have those and find out there's nothing there.
Would this be an appropriate time, because you had responded there on the show live, and that what the comment you made from that clip we just showed was followed up by something that I had been noticing on social media right after this event occurred. And
This
the reason
is exactly
that
where I was going to go.
And the reason that Stephanie Fetzer's name was being mentioned in the program on that specific week, and we were reaching out to Jessica, was because Stephanie Fetzer had very much taken this incident falling in line with Keith Bowe and Mike Petum and Aaron Barnard and this same, I mean, a lot of them, Candlelight crew, that were pushing this narrative that Dan and Dawna Wilson, like some of them, again, having information before it was ever made available to the public, because they were specifically mentioning my name, Dawna Wilson, and that was only, typically Dan's the one that's going to be blamed, right? But that was really specific to this case because, as it turned out, Ryan McClintock had mentioned my name, so that's how that's getting out. But so Stephanie Fetzer's hot on the trail of this along with these other guys, and she makes this Facebook post on April 7th saying, I watched a mentally ill man escalate wildly this past weekend. I watched his post and prayed that someone would help him get the help he clearly needed. He was arrested on Saturday evening and charged with malicious injury to property and terroristic threats. Praise God, he wasn't hurt and neither was anyone else. I'm sharing these posts that he made, not to keep him in the spotlight. On that note, please be praying for him and his family that he is able to get the help he needs. I'm wondering, at what point do we look at the people responsible for misinforming and radicalizing vulnerable people? He interviewed Dan Wilson on or about January 13th. After that, he seems to have spiraled into the mental break that culminated in his
By that,
arrest
she means
on
3
Saturday.
months. 3 months.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then someone ought to ask Dan and Dawna Wilson what their involvement with Ryan McClintock has been over the last 90 days. What was their communication with him like these past 90 days? Really, really specific question that Stephanie Fetzer, there's more there. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Very specific question that she's putting out there on social media. And it's highly calculated.
Mm-hmm.
But then it went along with this post where she had the visual images, Dan, with some photos that we had taken after he was a guest on Ryan's podcast back in January, some of McClintock's more recent video clips as he was escalating. And then the one that I took issue with, and where we were making an appeal because we had not spoken with Jessica Haidt, Ryan McClintock's sister, but I had just seen, okay, Jessica's coming. Jessica also, who's claiming to be Ryan's sister, is also coming out on social media. And I'm going to show you guys this. And you got to bear with me in this because you need to see this all the way through. This is not a dig on Jessica. So I need you to understand that. But she had shortly after this come out with a statement saying this is her brother. And then also was highly specific and saying he's being manipulated by Dan and Dawna Wilson. They've taken advantage of him and used his manic state to take their advantage. Now, when I read that, I wasn't upset with Jessica.
No,
I thought my initial thought was I know in my heart of hearts, I know in my gut who the operatives are who already have their tentacles into her. Now, it wasn't. And so you need to understand that screenshot that I just showed you, it was screenshotted. I don't know how to explain this. At the top, the time, it typically has a timestamp. It says just now. You can see that on here. Jessica Haidt, meaning posted this just now.
Right.
What that means is whoever got that screenshot did it the second, like the split second that it was posted to Facebook.
Right.
That then Stephanie Fetzer was using to her own devices, and it was highly calculated. And she used that in her collage of images also as one of these people that was in essence accusing Dan and Dawna Wilson. And of course, Fetzer, I'm just asking innocent questions. But I made an appeal to Jessica that night on the live stream saying, you have to understand who these people are and reach out. And so since then,
there was a couple more days. We'll go back to the slide. We're almost done with this, and you're going to want to stick around for the last.
Keep going.
She says, I'm catching my place. During our live stream, sorry, Brett, he is spitting facts. So she saw what we were saying and started to have a change of heart. Brett responds, says, yeah, but he always has to try and insinuate shit because he's clueless. As far as this car, you need to contact Captain Jeremy Heil. Again, we've established why in the world does he need to contact Heil if, in fact, Coeur d'Alene PD is in charge of the impound. She says, thank you. He says, you bet. And then Thursday morning, 7:22 a.m., pretty early, he says, give me a buzz when you got some free time. Now, folks, I want you to listen to this last text message that I'm going to read to you. Take screenshots of this, folks, because this is pretty important. Surplus is allegedly the surplus. The text message states, the sheriff just called me and said, if you talk to your brother, have him ask to speak to Sheriff Norris to the watch commander because he's got to do it. And then Bob's going to get your release. Coeur d'Alene police arrested Ryan. They're the ones that charged him. Court on Monday. Judge placed, from our understanding, Norris was one of several recipients that were the recipient of a no contact order, meaning Ryan could not contact Norris. And by the way, Norris should not be able to contact Ryan either. But you have Brett Surplus acting as a proxy for, allegedly, for Bob Norris, unless Surplus is making all this shit up, which wouldn't surprise me, trying to be the big man that he is, kind of like what he was doing on Kane's Chicken.
Exactly.
But he's what I would call offering a quid pro quo. You tell your brother, ask him to contact the watch commander, which would have been Jeremy Heil, Captain Heil. Tell him that he wants to talk to Norris. He'll have to let him. And then Norris will make certain that you get the release of the what we understand is the vehicle based on the previous conversation. Folks, this is what we call interfering with an investigation. If Bob Norris is one of the stated victims in this crime, Ryan was being charged with terrorist acts. Why in the world would Norris be attempting, as we read earlier, right after the arrest, to use his contacts to try to obtain information about the phone that Ryan had, sending messages like Padula to come in and get him out to go to the ranch without even knowing what his mental state was, not even knowing what the judge was going to say. But Norris is attempting, in my belief, this is what you call conspiracy. Why in the hell is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, if this really is true, and I hope you're paying attention, what in the hell is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, aka the supposed constitutional sheriff, using non-sworn citizens to carry out duties for him? Doesn't he have Bruce Matari to do that? Other special deputies? But why is he using, allegedly, the likes of Brett Surplus? And, well, let's bring a few others in. Mike Petum, because Petum, as Jessica has referred to us, or relayed to us rather, there are several in a group text chain between Sheriff Norris, Petum, Surplus, deputies, and other citizens. Maybe Brad Cree was one of them. Maybe. That there is this chain that has gone around where they discuss things that they were discussing Ryan's arrest a week prior. A week prior. They were watching the videos, and we have the evidence of Bob Norris and Brad Cree as two examples of interacting with Ryan's manic posts, if you will. Why is a sheriff interacting with somebody that obviously is going through some kind of a mental break, and then attempting to get his proxies to frame Dan and Dawna Wilson by bringing them in, insists that they find out that Corlane knows that Wilsons were provoking him, and we want to find the messages that were going through and make sure. I mean, this is tampering. Absolutely. There is no argument about it. It is tampering.
And to be clear, getting directly in touch with Ryan McClintock's sister and pushing her to go grab evidence, get into his phone, his iPad, and look for intel on communications between us.
Why in the hell
for that evidence
would Bob Norris want to get a hold of Ryan's phone? Ask yourself that. If you are of a reasonable mind, ask yourself why a sheriff, the same guy, by the way, that went and drugged Theresa Borenpohl out of that town hall. There's certain things that sheriffs should not be doing. Why in the hell is he wanting to get a hold of evidence? Why is he tampering with the investigation? Why did Coeur d'Alene PD blow off Jessica when she brought this to their attention and said, hey, this is from surplus and it appears to be political. How come the Coeur d'Alene PD just blew it off? Apparently. And by the way, Mike Petum, you and your big fat mouth to go with that big fat 300-pound gut of yours, when you hang out at coffee stands and run your mouth, allegedly telling McClintock's sisters or McClintock's girlfriend, allegedly telling girls at coffee stand where she works, when are you going to leave that loser and go for me? And then proceed to also run your mouth about this text message chain that you're a part of, and that Wilsons are going to be running their mouths on line tonight and everybody needs to tune in. Look, I implore the Federal Bureau of Investigations. I can't even believe I'm saying this. It is time for the FBI to come in and open up an investigation into Bob Norris, Brett Surplus, Mike Petum, North Idaho News, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, to find out what the fuck is going on. And let's not forget something here. You have Ryan himself that is also a victim in all of this. Yes, I know some of you are going to say, well, he's the one that took all this heat because he's the one that caused the actions. Without a proper investigation, how do we know what we know? I mean, if Brett Surplus is going to run his mouth to numerous people that they were attempting to set up an entrapment for Dan and Dawna, or a defamation lawsuit on the Tundra Kelso incident, and you see the evidence that we have right now of him with these text messages to Jessica, how do we know that Ryan wasn't manipulated by somebody in this posse? How do we know that somebody in Bob Norris's goon squad did not give Ryan anonymous tips? Because as you recall, Ryan relayed to the investigating officer, the arresting officer, that there was anonymous sources that he wasn't going to disclose. And we know that Ryan, from the reports I'm hearing, was high on mushrooms. Is it far out of the possibility for somebody to have sent him from the Bob Norris camp? Is it possible to have sent these random anonymous tips, whipping Ryan up into a frenzy? Did somebody help him start using mushrooms and get him into a paranoid state? If we had real investigators in this town, we would know. But it's time for the Federal Bureau of Investigations to come in here and to start investigating potential civil rights violations and criminal conspiracies. You guys have been listening to us for 2+ years talk about the corruption of Bob Norris. I've shown you a lot of evidence. We were just recounting the other day when somebody asked, well, what exactly has Bob done? And we came up with our long list. I'm not going to go over it again here now. So many of you have continually ridiculed. He's a great sheriff, Ed Baharan. He's the greatest sheriff ever. All the old farts love him because he claims that they're friends. We believe that he's crooked. We believe that we've shown many instances of unethical behavior at best. This, to me, if this is true, unless Brett Surplus is trying to be the little big man, only Bob Norris can straighten this out. Is Brett Surplus speaking on behalf of Bob Norris, or is Bob Norris completely out of the picture, and Brett Surplus is just trying to be the big tough man, so desperately wanting everyone's attention that he can't get anywhere else because he's such a failed, miserable excuse of a human? Brett Surplus, you are the most pathetic individual I have ever known. I didn't say most corrupt, most evil. You're the most pathetic. I feel sorry for you. failed at business, failed at life, failed at relationships, and now you're carrying the bucket for the sheriff who will leave you high and dry the moment the heat comes on and it's your turn to sit on that hot seat. You don't think he won't disown you in a moment? And you fat fuck P-tomb, disgusting individual that you are. North Idaho News is my belief a front for Bob Norris's criminal cabal that's being run out of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. Surplus for prison, in my estimation. What do you guys think? And by the way, for those that are curious, our attorneys did send out notification to an individual in Kootenai County of our intent to sue them if they don't adhere to the terms that we set out. We'll let you guys know next week whether or not we are fully prepared. This individual is most likely listening. This individual will be going to court because I'm not backing down on this. I'm not going to back down on you evildoers and your bullshit in this county. While you claim that you're Christians, you claim that you're conservatives, and what you have done is you have made this identity of some pseudo faith and politics your true religion. You're not Christian and you're definitely not conservative, and there's a whole pile of you. And you stink like the cow dung that's out in the pasture after a hot summer day. If you don't think that I won't fall through, I'm fully ready the minute that you don't comply to file that lawsuit, and I'll do it with a smile. And then I'm going to come and tell the entire audience who you are and what you were supposed to do and why we're going to sue you and why we're going to beat your ass in court. Now, to my fellow Kootenai County citizens, what are you going to start doing to hold these elected officials accountable? How much is enough? Does Ryan McClintock's life matter? Does the fact that he should be getting equal protection under the law, his due process, matter? Who are the investigators? Coeur d'Alene PD seems to be incompetent. Seems to be. Whether it's Dave Hagar. Dave, I really hope you set the record straight and call Mike P-tomb a liar. I've never heard of it. An investigator that's not interested that the sheriff allegedly is attempting to interfere with your investigation. Why in the fuck doesn't that matter? Matters to me. Should matter to you citizens out there as well. Remember, it's your liberty to lose right here in this county, same as it is federally. If you're going to sit on your ass and do nothing, you're not going to hold these elected officials accountable, including all the other electeds that know what Norris is capable and has done in the past. Keep electing them in over and over and over. Wait until it's your turn. A guy like me can fight these bastards all day long because I got more than enough fighting me, and they haven't been successful yet in taking me on. You think about all the things that they've done to take us out. Mm-hmm. What happens when it's you and you don't have the financial resources or the skill set or the background to protect yourself? Will it matter then?
Well, Dan's t-shirt probably makes a little bit more sense tonight. If anybody is interested in getting your hands on that, it may or may not be available for sale. It is a singular edition t-shirt. But yeah, if anyone's interested in getting their hands on that, you can let us know. info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. This may be one of our really most important episodes ever for you to share and reshare and send in those direct messages. I usually don't go that hard after this. It's usually more like, you know what, the people who are ready to hear this are going to hear it. But this is such a compilation of 2 or 2.5 years of information with all of the facts and evidence that you guys need, and the information in this episode tonight really connect so many of those dots as to who these people are that are working behind the scenes and believe so hardly that they are in power positions in this county that they can use people for their evil devices. And if there are voices speaking out against and exposing them, they appear to be going through whatever means necessary to make that happen, whether it's unethical, immoral, and illegal. So it's an important episode to share so that message gets out. Please do that. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast. You can visit our website, as always, for more information. That's at libertywithoutcompromise.com. So for those of you who are newer here, or maybe even just finding us live tonight, libertywithoutcompromise.com is the perfect hub of information for past episodes. You can use that search bar there to find anything by keywords to what you might be looking for. And if you can't find it, there's a contact form there on that website as well, libertywithoutcompromise.com. If you love podcasts, you can listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. And then also remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because every single one of our live streams are archived right there on YouTube. That is at the Idaho Sheriff. So I think that's it. I know we're tired and our bumper music's about to run out.
I'm going to go smoke a cigar. Listen,
yeah.
If you pray to the Father above, quietly in your closet, pray for us, pray for our security, wisdom, pray for my buddy Jim, his continual struggle. Please pray for Jim. We'll see you guys next week. Next time, stay strong and courageous.